Okay, folks, why don't you come on in and let's get going. As you probably have noticed, I have altered the schedule a little bit, in that we, instead of last week when I was without equipment, we're going to talk a little bit about what we're going to talk about last week, which is basically evaluation questions and determining what type of evaluation questions that you need to have, and all the things that go into that decision. A lot of things like who are the stakeholders, and what are the interests of the stakeholders, and what questions are appropriate for different stakeholders. I mean, one thought process in evaluation has always been that you evaluate and you may produce, the big piece, the big evaluation report, but you also may also produce a series of smaller reports that are targeted for particular constituent groups or stakeholder groups. And so if it's vitally important to get all of those things kind of thought through and worked out at the beginning, so that as you go through the process, you're aware of and you're thinking about what data you might have that answers, say, the questions of funders, or the questions of administrators, or the questions of parents, or the questions of other teachers in the school, or things like that. And so there is a thought process that has to go into determining evaluation questions, and I'm going to kind of spend a little bit of time, helping you kind of think that through, because it is a kind of a key piece of the mix. And one that very often can come back to bite you if you leave somebody out, or if you've left a group out, or if, anytime that someone's not involved in something, they always have a reason to complain about it. So, but first off, I hope everybody's doing well, and I hope everybody's situations are somewhat stable from last time we talked a couple of weeks ago until this point. If you're aware of that, the circumstances at app are certainly less than stable, and they've made some national news reports and such, and it is kind of rattling through all the administrative rafters and all the faculty rafters and all, and there's just a whole bunch of people that aren't real pleased with where app is at right now in terms of dealing with the pandemic. But they're not the only ones. I'm up here in Harrisonburg, right down the road from James Madison, and they made the New York Times last week, and because of the rapid way in which their rate of positives went up, and at one time it was well over 20% of everybody being tested was coming back positives, and at the app it had jumped from 2 or 3% to 9 or 10%. And there is a common denominator there, and the common denominator is the notion that you can the notion that you can trust students to 20 and 21-year-olds to act like grown-ups, and to take care of themselves and to monitor each other, and those are just not things that typically happen. We were in a very morbid sort of sense, I was making the prediction that the first group to have a cluster would be a fraternity, and it was. And the same thing at Madison up here. The first group was a fraternity, quickly followed by sports teams, quickly followed by sororities, quickly followed by freshman dormitories. And so, those are all where you would expect hot spots to be, and a lot of faculty were predicting from the get-go that's where it would happen. And the universities felt that they had it under control, and obviously not. So anyhow, that's been my world the last week or 10 days, just kind of reacting to some of that. How about you? How are things going? Is everything going along? Are you having fewer students, more clusters, or great success in what you're doing?
We are still remote right now, but we have had multiple schools have outbreaks. So next week we had what originally were our first teacher work days. So now on those teacher work days, everyone's going to work from home so we can deep clean all of the buildings. I guess my other frustration would be again, as people have seen from poor examples and, in our government about masks and things like that. So then they go to these parties or festivities or functions and then come back into the workplace and spread the virus instead of, you have other people that haven't been out or have been doing all the safe things, but then are still having to deal with the repercussions of other people's poor choices. So.
Yeah, unfortunately, we can't exist in isolation. It'd be nice sometimes, like in the middle of a pandemic, if we could. But you always have people that kind of feel like they have a better idea.
But we've also consistently made poor choices now 7 months into this.
Yeah, this is true, and hopefully we will learn at some point. Though I go through my cynical moments every now and then, but I try to get out of those pretty quickly and realize you wake up every day and you're still kicking, and you kind of work through the day, get it done. That's about all you can do. Take care of yourself, take care of your family, and stay away from idiots. That's about it's been my mantra here recently. Stay away from idiots, because there will always be people that will be idiots about things. Always. Others.
I was going to say, I agree with that. There will always be people who are idiots. But like in our personal lives, we may have choices to stay away from them. In our work lives, when it's keep your job or not, we don't have that choice. So when I go into buildings and people aren't wearing masks, and then we have to close because there are cases, and we've had over 68 staff test positive in our district, and we just brought back pre-K last week, having not met metrics that our board voted on, and we brought back kindergarten yesterday and have already had to close 2 of those schools today. I look at that in conjunction with my mom's hometown of Norwood and Stanley County, where they are about to bury a teacher who died from COVID, and I don't have a whole lot positive to contribute or to say, and I don't want to be a negative person. Like, that's not who I am at my core, but the rates here where I live are climbing, and we've only brought back pre-K and kindergarten, and we've only brought back kids whose parents wanted to send them because it's currently voluntary, which is how we've gotten around the fact that our school board voted on metrics that would have to be met to bring our students back, and we're nowhere close to meeting those metrics.
Yeah, and it's I think I mentioned the last time we talked, it is this notion that schools are the center of the community, and they provide, services more than educational services to the community. And but at some point in time, you gotta, take your head out of wherever it happens to be. I'm going to be not too bad here and say out of the sand, and realize that, you can't, you can't fight a virus. I mean, you really can't fight a virus. You can't tell a virus, what the schedule going to be, and who's going to be where. I mean, a virus like this is constantly in the environment someplace, and it's looking for a way in. And it's not that it's got an energy force or a life force or anything. It's just hanging out, waiting for somebody to stumble right in. And unfortunately, we have a lot of people that do that, stumble right in. And then people that, I have a reasonably good friend that I've known for quite a while, for 20 years, that probably not going to make it, but she was kind of a semi-hypochondriac. I mean, she just, everything, she had multiple allergies, and so she fixed her own food for years and years and years, and didn't buy anything from the store that wasn't organic, and anything that had hormones in it or anything like that. And so she's just been holed up for the best part of 6 months now. And the other day, just kind of out of the blue, she contracted it, and had to call 911 to come get her. But it wasn't that she had actively been out there. It was that it just either through spreading through the air, or something she touched, or something that somebody else had touched, or whatever. But it's it got her. And given her history, I don't have she's going to have a battle. She's going to have a battle on her hands. And given what I've seen already, in my extended family, I'm not very hopeful for her. But, we're trying to keep her spirits up, keep her going. And, she's fading a little bit more every day. So, that's what you see. That's you do the best you can, and then occasionally it doesn't matter what you do. And so that's the fear of it. And until everybody gets that fear, I guess we're going to battle this thing for a while. I hope we get clear of it by, sometime middle of the summer next fall. I'd like to see some decent football, or college games, or, but I can survive without them. And I think we all can, and we just have to hang in there. But any other thoughts or other notions? Or
I have a question. I don't know if this is the time to ask it.
Sure, ask whatever.
Regarding some of the other assignments, is there any more directions besides just the one-page rubrics?
Essentially, no. All right, I have a little bit more direction to some of them that I will pop up, but most of them are simply the one-page rubrics. And there is a rationale for that. And I argued kind of against that when we were setting these things up, but the rationale is that there was a desire for the responses to be localized to your setting, and there was a desire for there to be, some levels of creativity, and I understand that those are always good things to have, particularly when you're getting ready to go out and be a professional setting. But at the same time, I think there are some other things I can add to that.
Yeah, I'm all for localized content, but like right now, it's just not a lot to go off of.
Okay.
For those that like to work ahead, and I'm willing to say it. I don't know if anyone else feels the same way, but I know there's, in terms of like school improvement plans, like right now that is not at the
it's not priority.
It's priority. And I'm our school improvement team's chair, so like I'm the one that has to update it every month, and it's still just at the bottom of the barrel. So I was just trying to think of, if there's not more direction, if there's just something that we can do to better encompass the leadership goals, like for our leadership standards. I'm just trying to find the best solution going forward, I guess, trying to problem solve and use.
All right. I will take a look at that. I'm cooped up all week, and so I will attempt to take a good look at that and see if I can provide more direction on all of those. I think you know, anytime you do kind of a course for the, I mean, we haven't offered this course before this previous summer. And so I think everybody's getting a little frustrated with how, you know, maybe we expected a little bit better circumstance to deal with. And we're all dealing with, you know, multiple squeezes coming from all directions. And so it's, but I will take a look and I'll see if I can provide you some more direction, or if we can maybe, if you haven't worked ahead too far, if we can look at stripping off, you know, one of those, something like that. I thought a couple of them were really kind of extraneous to begin with, but that's just me. And, you know, I think the school improvement plan thing, yeah, that's a given. You know, those are things that we have to put in there, but we do have to have, you know, some of the other stuff we may have some wiggle room on. I've already expressed that concern to a couple of other instructors of the course, so I'll touch base with them again, and if I can't get them to think about it a little bit in a little bit different stance, then I'll just kind of do that myself. I mean, what are they going to do? Fire me? I mean, and I live 300 miles away, so they're not going to come and burn my house down. So, you know, it's not that big deal.
Bold steps, Dr.
What's that?
I said take bold steps, Dr.
Bold steps. You got to always take bold steps. You know, bold steps will either get you where you want to go or in a lot of trouble, and that's okay. Sometimes trouble's not bad. But anyhow, okay. Other thoughts, other questions before we talk a little bit about it, evaluation questions. I don't want to take a lot. I originally planned on this session being about an hour, and then you know, from here on out, most of these sessions will be short. They'll be about an hour or so, with the majority of time given to so you can pursue some of the more group stuff a little bit better, and try to provide, you know, a few resources as we go along. But you know, I think we were going to have only a couple of three more of these online sessions, synchronous sessions, and then they'll be not full length sessions. They'll be about an hour, maybe a little bit more than that. So you can kind of think about, you know, the planning process on that. And I will take a look at those assignments and see what I can do with them. It's just, you know, we'll see.
Thank you for doing that. Thank you for looking at it too.
No, not a problem. Just we need to do it. We need to do it. Everybody has to be a little bit fluid right now, I think, because your world is a bit more crazy than you thought it was going to be. And if you could have chosen not to do classes this semester, you probably would have taken that choice. But, you know, these cohort programs have kind of I mean, if you get out of the sequence, they're really, it's bad to try to get back into them. So, okay. Any other thoughts, questions before we talk a little bit? Yeah, there were, as I said, I'm not real wild on the text material and source material, but I do hope you read those sections that had to do with developing evaluation questions. You know, evaluation has been kind of my, I don't know, bailiwick for a long time, because I spent an awful long time doing, most of my consulting work was evaluating federal programs or state programs or school level programs, or, you know, whatever. And I lost count a long time ago, but somewhere in the mix, I did maybe about 110 of those over the last 30 or 35 years. And I got out of that just a few years ago, because it is very time consuming, and it does, you know, kind of get you out of the house a little bit too much. The last year I was at JMU, I was doing a big federal grant, and I spent 120 some odd days out of the 180-day school year out of town, just doing evaluation visits, because we had 55 grants and 55 mini grants and 4 large programs to do. And even with a staff of, 5 assistants to work with it, it still put me on the road an awful lot. And so, I know there are folks that have a certain conception of evaluation that may or may not be realistic in terms of what actually happens in evaluations. And my rule of thumb always was is that if I couldn't go in and see where policy had changed, basic budgets had changed, or personnel job descriptions had changed after a 3-year grant or a 4-year grant, then it hadn't really accomplished much of anything. It'd just go away, and all those pieces that came with it would just go away. You might fold a couple of things in, but basically somebody else would add it to their job description, and you wouldn't have any new personnel or new monies or anything like that, or new policies that you could point to and say, okay, we did all that early intervention stuff, and then the grant went away, and so we stopped doing that stuff. Or we did the after school programs, and then the grant went away, so we stopped doing that. And so all of the grants and things like that, and I think in a sense school improvement stuff is always based on the prospect that it can become sustainable, that you find it's a better way to do something, and in a better way to do something, it will prove its worth, and the organization will adopt it. And so I got to spend some time, for 3 or 4 years there working with a school improvement group, and we adopted that sort of notion. That's what kind of got me into that. I really didn't have the time to do that at that time, but I got kind of drawn into it, invited into it by a colleague, and the money wasn't bad, but it was one of those things where we actually felt like we were doing something useful and not just occupying time and space for a period of 2 or 3 years and then leaving. And so it was I was getting a little bit cynical and jaded about the whole evaluation notion. And then I was engaged in that for 3 or 4 years and did a lot of that. And the last big one I did when I was at JMU, and then I realized that evaluation done right can be a very, very powerful way of helping us identify what works, what doesn't work, and what will improve conditions for everybody, as opposed to just one group or another. And so in thinking about evaluation questions, I'm not going to give you a list of here are 10 things or 8 things or 7 things. I always had a fairly simple sort of notion that you ought to ask those questions, and you ought to ask research evaluation questions in 2 different dimensions. Okay. One dimension is composed of very practical questions, and those practical questions are like fidelity of implementation type things. Did all those things you said you were going to do happen the way you said they were going to happen? Did you have people that were assigned to do certain things? Did they do those things? And the collecting evaluation data for that is purely a matter of a lot of record keeping. It's a matter of, okay, where are the minutes from meetings? Where are the job descriptions that show that this person took on this task? Where are the products that this group was supposed to generate, whatever it was? And so you're looking at not necessarily penetrating sorts of evaluation questions. You're just looking for evidence that what happened was consistent with what you had said would happen. So they're really sort of fidelity of implementation type things. The second type of thing in that first dimension is what were actual outcomes when measured against your goals. I mean, if you said you were going to improve reading scores by, I don't know, half a grade level, what's the actual data? Did you improve it by half a grade level? And so that data is pretty easy too. I mean, it's journal, once again, it's records that we all keep. How was the attendance? Did it actually improve the way you said it was going to improve? Now there's a lesson to be learned there, and the lesson is don't do these lofty sort of goal statements that say you're going to have 100% of people doing something, or are you going to improve 5% a year for the next 4 years or whatever, because those in most cases are just not realistic. And so when you start matching data points against what you said you were going to do, it's just not there. And then the third main thing in this first sort of dimension, and these are just kind of the nuts and bolts stuff, is, you know, what are their perceptions about whatever it is you're evaluating? You know, what do the parents think? What do the administrators think? What do teachers think? What do students think? And, you know, that's a more qualitative type thing. And it may involve, you know, some, 10 or 15 minutes at PTA meetings, or, you know, a few minutes at a faculty meeting, or a survey of students, or, you know, focus groups or something like that, that are fairly easy to organize, but you need that perception information, because if you don't, anything that has any sort of group against it in a building is not going to work. If the teachers are not happy with it, it's not going to work. If the administrators find it unwieldy to administer, it's not going to work. If parents hate what it's doing, it's not going to work. And so you have to have perception data so that you can kind of see what the issues are and where people stand. And so those, just on the basic data collection dimensions, first little sort of dimension I talk about, maybe on the x-axis or whatever, is the fidelity of implementation stuff, actual outcomes measured against goals, and perceptions. Now, those are all things that you base your data collection around. And so when you establish a data collection plan, outside of the fact that you try to work with data that was already going to be collected or hasn't already been collected, as you, or could be collected, as you establish that data collection plan, you have to fill those 3 slots. Did the things happen the way you thought it would? Laid it out to happen, fidelity of implementation. How did your outcomes stack up against your goals? And what were the perceptions among, all the stakeholders? Now, that's just the nuts and bolts of it. Now, there's another dimension always to evaluation, and thinking about what the evaluation questions are is, what are all the different stakeholder groups want to know and need to know? Now, both those things. Sometimes people want to know something, but they don't need to know that. It's like a parent calling up and saying, I know Johnny got a 91 on this, what did somebody else get? Well, obviously you can't say that, you can't do that. But, people sometimes want to know things that they just don't need to know. And so, funders need to see cost on investment. They need to see how this is improving something to the point that there's a return on investment. Administrators need to see how something can be administered without an extra burden. And so their questions are related to, is this worthwhile doing given what we have to do to make it work? Parents need to know, is it helping my kid? Is this helping my student? Is this helping, how can you tell me that this is helping Johnny or Susie? I mean, how is this working? What's it doing for them? And the hardest group, believe it or not, are teachers. And teachers always need an example. They always need somebody they can look at that has done something and been successful with it as an example. And so one of the most difficult parts in working with a school improvement program or something, a grant or something school improvement, is to find somebody that's enthusiastic enough and committed enough to be that role model. Because teachers have to change by example and not by, sure, we'll do that, fiat. And so if you look at some of the stuff that like Tom Gusky talks about with professional development and evaluating professional development, that there's always a central one or two people in a building that provide the example that others might follow. And, you make them the example. You make them the people that help provide the professional development, that provide examples, that become mentors, that, all those things, so that, teachers will see, okay, well, that's a pretty good idea. Let me try that. Let me see if that works. And we do that pretty well in elementary schools. Intuitively, I think elementary teachers are, particularly in the early grades, are kind of wired to do that, to look at each other and figure out what's the best, what's the really works and what doesn't work. And hey, she's really doing a neat thing over there. Let's talk to her about that and see how she's doing it. Or, he's really good with this. Let's talk to him and see how he's doing it. For some reason, when we get up a little bit further into the primary grades and into middle school and high school, we kind of, become a bit more siloed. And whether it's siloed by subject area or, department or building or wing of the building or whatever, I mean, we become a bit more siloed. And so it becomes a bit more difficult to have that sort of dynamic happening. And if you really want things to occur in a building, you have to create that dynamic somehow. You have to find those, more people, I hate to use the term, but it's used some in the literature. You have to find some of those more people that are willing to be, evangelists for something, for a particular methodology, for formative assessment, for whatever it is, that they want to go out and convince other people that this is a great idea. And so when you begin writing these questions, writing, not research questions, but evaluation questions, you first have to think about, okay, here are these three types of data I have to make sure I collect on one dimension. Fidelity of implementation, outcomes versus goals, and perception data. But on the other dimension, I have to think about, okay, which bits and pieces of this information is the best thing to provide school boards, is the best thing to provide leadership, the best thing to provide teachers. Because nobody is going to read that big, long report you do. They're going to pick pieces of it that fit them. And so you might as well do that on the front side. You generate the big report, but then you generate some summaries for different constituent groups. And it always seemed to work. And that was something that someone very early on in the process, that very first class I took in my doctoral program was an evaluation class about running projects and things like that. And the guy that I had for that, he kind of went through these sorts of things, and of course you ignore it because you think that's just his BS for the night or his BS for the week or whatever. But every one of them worked. And so, I became his evangelist, I guess, for that, and went out and sold it to a lot of other people, and made a little bit of money, bought my first house doing evaluation work, things like that. So it's, it's that kind of thing that when you find something that works like that, there's a reason it works. And you just kind of go with it. Thoughts?
I think it's really interesting saying that because it's so you saying like there's that one person who sells it and you're talking about the primary grades. I teach first grade, and that is very, very true. Like it didn't even occur to me until you said that, because a lot of the times there's like a core one or two people, because our grade levels are huge. Like we have 12 first grade teachers. Yeah. And there's normally that one, sometimes it switches, but that will advocate to do something, and it kind of gets the rest of us to buy into it more, and it's a little bit more long lasting, I guess.
Yeah, because you see it's successful. That's the thing. I mean, teachers want to see success before they'll kind of buy into something. They want to make sure that it's a successful way of doing things before they'll buy into it. Now, if you want to guarantee that teachers won't buy into something, just require them to do it by fiat and see how that works. I've yet to see how that ever has worked out. And it's teachers can either make you look really good as an administrator, or they can make you look really bad. And it depends upon how much you trust and honor them, as opposed to, feel like you got to be the, king of the castle or the queen of the castle. You have to trust them, but at the same time, you have to realize the dynamic that takes place in a building. And part of that dynamic is this, kind of peer-to-peer interaction. I was talking with someone the other day, and they're doing this online learning thing for the first time. And she was a student of mine a few years ago, a doc student, and she's teaching in another institution. She said, and she had not used a lot of online stuff. She had been mainly, doing a lot of face-to-face stuff. She was doing online stuff. She says, well, I always am pretty sure that when I send them into groups, either in whatever platform she's using, that part of the time they're talking about me. And, I said, maybe, probably not. You're about the least interesting thing in their conversation. I doubt they're talking about you, but, if they are, so what? Are they doing the work? Are they asking good questions? Are they staying engaged a little bit? If so, then maybe you're doing okay. And so I thought that, and I think that's a lot of people at the university level have some issues with that. And you probably have, at your levels, you probably have some issue with that.
Well, I've seen an issue we're going through right now is, as we develop and monitor and kind of look at the data to update our school improvement plan, it's kind of like relinquishing some control from the administration and trying to like analyze the data, versus what I've noticed is that my principal wants to analyze it himself, and he wants to set the goals up himself, versus allowing a team to kind of collaborate and come to those realizations through the data. And that's kind of where we're struggling right now, trying to coincide and do that at the same time. So I definitely see what you're talking about with that.
Yeah, and if he's smart, he'll learn. He'll figure it out. Because,
He retires, so I don't know if he's beating on that or not. So
okay, well then he's not worried about that. He's got the old model going. Nobody's smart enough to figure this out but me, so I'm gonna lay it out, and then everybody will do it. Kind of the corporate model, I think it's called, but we know how that works in government and other places. But it is hard to relinquish control. But if you're going to be a decent administrator, the very first thing you have to realize is you got to give up control to get control. because if you don't give up control, you won't get respect. And if you don't have respect, you have no control. And so, you know, you gotta give a lot to get it back. And you will, inevitably you will, unless you're just the biggest jerk in the world and they really want to get rid of you. But, you know, it is, I mean, it's counterintuitive to what we have kind of thought about in terms of just the term leadership. You know, you don't, that's a military term, by the way, leader, because they taught in the military very early on, if you wanted to be a leader, you had to be in front of the charge. And it took a while before the leaders in front of the charge realized that it made for a lot of memorials and short lifespans because, you know, you either got shot from the front or the back, one or the other. And after a while, you know, we've kind of adapted that term leader, but leader doesn't mean the same thing. Leader is someone who's able to bring people together. If I had to think of a simple definition, it's someone who's able to bring people together, you know, for a common purpose. And nowhere in that statement does it mean that you have to do all the work, make all the commitments, you know, lay out all the plans, things like that. And so it is sort of counterintuitive for the way we've been taught to think about leadership. Thoughts?
I agree that leadership has changed a lot, as far as like giving ownership to everybody and inclusiveness and just making them feel part of the process in decision making. I know one of my administrators said, you know, Sydney, I know the answer I want. It's a matter of if I get it from the teachers that I want, so that way they feel appreciated, that it was included in the decision making, but also I knew what I wanted, just make them feel like they kind of helped with how to come up with the solution. And I was like, well, that's one way to look at it. But
yeah, it's just missing one piece there. What happens if they come up with a different solution? Yeah, that's the piece that's missing. I mean, you have to be willing to also think alternative, you know, out of the box a little bit and think alternative solutions to things. And, you know, everybody's coming from a different perspective. So what might be an administrative solution? And the administrative imperative, by the way, is to keep control of the building. Whatever you're in charge of, you need to keep that controlled. You need to keep that flowing. You need to keep that working. Now, in a school building, that means you need to know where all the kids are all the time. You need, you know, all those things that have to do with the requirements or the responsibilities of being in charge of the building. But beyond that point, you know, it's other things can be shared responsibilities and should be. I mean, because, you know, if something screws up, it's coming back on your head anyhow. And so you might as well spread out the blame as best you can. But, you know, I'm sorry, that's cynical, but you might as well, you know, get to a point where people are, you know, you're all coming to a solution that you feel good about.
Yeah, I like the metaphor of how do you hold the most water in your hand by not, you know, crushing down. The tighter you hold it, the less you have.
Mm-hmm.
And similarly for leadership, you know, if you're holding your organization as tightly as you can, you have less control and you have less, you know, buy-in, you know.
Right.
But
exactly.
if you hold your hand out and your organization out in a most supportive way possible without crushing everybody, you will hold more water.
Exactly.
So I like that metaphor with that.
Yeah. And if, you know, I didn't particularly aspire to administration roles. I ended up in a few, but I didn't aspire to those. And mainly the reason I didn't is because, what I did was a lot of individualized stuff, working with data and analyzing stuff and things like that. And so the way I work professionally didn't translate well to administration. It's kind of, I had to put on a separate hat all the time. I had to, like Sydney, like your administrator told you that he knows where he wants to go, but he knows he needs to bring them along. Well, I was kind of that way early on in my administrative roles too. And I felt I knew where they would end up in a lot of cases. And if it was not in the direction that I wanted it to go, it gave me some time to get comfortable with that. At least it gave me some time to think, okay, well, if they're going that way, let's do the ups and downs of that. And if we get a trade-off in that they won't like, then maybe they'll back off of it. But if I can't find a trade-off on that's really a negative, then why not? Let's do it that way. Because my job was to figure out whether something would work or was doable, as opposed to necessarily laying down the agenda, or here's all the things that we will do. And so it was it was always I liked being a little bit more actively engaged in the research and evaluation I was doing. So I got out of the administrative role as quickly as I could, and they kept dragging me back in, but I always found a way to get out of them after a couple of years. But it was, it was a choice. It was a choice I made, and that's the choice you got to make. If you want to be an administrator, though, you got to realize that, the metaphor about the water is exactly right. You got to be, you got to give a bit to get the respect and the trust back that will make you a good leader. So, when you're thinking about stakeholders and you're thinking about, the particular questions that you need for stakeholders, are there times when one group of stakeholders take on a greater importance than another group? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I always had if I had a default hierarchy when I was looking at schools about which stakeholders took on the greatest importance. And number one was students. Because the ultimate thing about schools is that they're there to benefit students. Number two, and this may sound strange, number two were teachers. Because they're the direct interaction with students. They're the layer between the institution and actual students. They're the ones that can affect change or disrupt change. And then it was a toss-up between administrators and parents, which I found both of them to be occasionally more of a pain in the ass than they needed to be. And so I always worked with students and teachers first, and then responded to parents and administrators as best I could. Now, that changed in my mind when I was dealing with parents and students that were disadvantaged in some way. Then I went with students and parents 1 and 2. Because I knew if you were going to have an impact on students, beyond that class or that school year or that program or whatever, you also had to have an impact on their parents or their guardians. And in one of the jobs where I was teaching early on, I was teaching a middle school for disadvantaged kids or kids that were at risk, basically. We had all kinds of categories of kids in there. They were all on probation with the school system and most with the courts. But they were a fairly large segment of them, I'd say maybe depending from class to class, but it could be a third, could be almost half, lived in foster care situations. And maybe half, if not more of those, lived in a group home, which at one point was a mental institution that had been converted into, a group home for indigent kids. And so I was always thinking, all right, students first, then if they've got problems, maybe it's the parents they need to deal with. Well, what's the parent when you're dealing with a group home or when you're dealing with foster parents? And so you always found that to be a difficult mix. But I actually went and did some little workshops and classes at the group home to help some of the staff there figure out how to help these kids do their homework. And, that was, nothing I was getting paid to do, but it made my job easier if the kids actually did their homework. And we could talk about that the next day. And so, yeah, you decide, you have to just make decisions about which stakeholders maybe take on a bigger importance, but you can't ignore any of them. But there might be certain ones that you have to value, you have to provide importance to. And you probably do that too. You probably do that too. Thoughts? Okay, well, I told you about an hour coming up on it. And, I had thought that this might not be a exciting sort of thought process because I really am concerned that you're got more going on your plate than, to listen to war stories, but that's okay. War stories sometimes have some currency to them. And I appreciate you putting up with me for a little while, but all these things that deal with the evaluation piece, you just, if don't get caught up in the complexity of it, just remember, that there are three kinds of data and you have to figure out questions related to all the different stakeholder groups. And if you're fine there, then you're fine. And there are no really bad questions. They're just, not well stated questions. And so you have to, each question has to be relative and contextual to your setting. And so you always have to be thinking about that. I will take a good look at the assignments and see if for something that I can't provide more information for, that's not one of the major things that goes in your portfolio, then I will see what adaptations I can do for that. But I'll make that happen quick. I'll make that happen in the next day or two.
Thank you. That would be really appreciated. I think we're all pretty overwhelmed, to say the least, with everything going on.
It's kind of the way of life right now. I think. we had a call the other day from the department head said, I need somebody to serve on the graduate AP and P committee. That's the committee that looks at all course changes and all that sort of stuff for the university at the graduate level. And I kind of followed that, and I noticed she didn't get any responses on that. And so I felt compelled. I said, Sean, as long as we're staying in a virtual capacity, because I don't do anything face to face these days. As long as we're doing virtual capacity, I'll be glad to do it. I've done it before. I'll be glad to do it. It's no big burden. And so, it took her all of 2 minutes to think about that. Before I could actually almost get off my email, she had responded back, well, thank you greatly. And so, yeah. I should not have done that, but, sometimes you just have to take on stuff that needs to be done, and you need to get it done. This is not a common time. This is, you do what you have to do time right now. Okay. All right. I will not see you for a couple weeks. I think I've blocked out the next 2 weeks for the groups to finish up the work or get as far along as the work they can to get the school improvement project ready for submission individually and things like that. So we'll, we won't see each other. I will be, this week and next week, I'll be right where you see me right now, trying to get a few thousand things done. The week after next, 2 weeks from yesterday, I'll be in the mountains again, well hidden, and I'll try to respond to emails as best I can, but I'm kind of hoping their internet goes out, and but we'll see. We have some friends that are part of our, have become our singular pod that we spend time with. Everybody needs a pod. You need other friends to talk to. You and your mate or your partner, eventually, it's good to talk to other people. And so we're going to the big cabin in the mountains for a few days. And so then it'll be the big push to get to the end of the semester after that. Okay. Thoughts, questions, pleadings, any of that? Yeah, I'm sorry. I guess I didn't send out an email, did I? I've been dead in the water for a few days, and I just got my laptop, upgraded and back up and running to the point where I could do Zoom again and run the doc cam and things like that. The desktop's dead again. I will never buy another HP. I may burn this one, even though I haven't fully paid for it yet, but I may burn it just because it's, sometimes you got to make a statement and send the video to HP so that they can get a good sensation on that. But yeah, it's a shame. I hope all of y'all are getting your laptops and your Chromebooks and iPads and all those things that your students need. And they're finally beginning to show up or have shown up, and now you have full complements of things. And I hope they don't break too soon. But these are all wishes that are unique to pandemics. So, I had to come up with some new wishes. Hang in there, stay safe, stay relatively happy because, it could be a lot worse. And no, don't say the second part of that, but I don't know how, but no, it could be a lot worse. So stay positive, stay focused, and, stay safe. Take care of yourself. Take care of your families. That's about the most important part of the whole process. And I will see you in 2 or 3 weeks out here. I'll look at those assignments and see what I can do, and then we'll go from there.
Have a good night.
All right. Y'all take it easy.
Bye-bye.
As I say,
See you, everybody.
safe.
What did we miss, Mr. Bolt?
What's that?
So what did we miss?
We were just talking, and I've got a video of this. I'm going to pop this video up. We talked about evaluation questions and what they need to look like and what they should be about. And I kind of didn't stick by the book on that. I kind of stuck by my 35 years of experience on that, and evaluating over 100 different projects. So just kind of some general guidance and rules for the road and thoughts about leadership and things like that, because there was some questions about, using this and understanding that this is an odd time. This is a crazy time. This is, the rules are really kind of out the window right now.
Okay.
And I also promised the group that I'd take a look at the assignments that don't go in your portfolio, and see if we could provide a little bit more guidance. And the ones I can't provide more guidance to, we may find that we want to write those off anyhow.
Okay.
So don't get too far ahead quite yet.
Okay.
Another day or two, and then I'll have looked at that.
All righty. Well, it's my fault. It's my fault Lakeisha and Steven's not here because I misinformed them.
It's me. I should have sent an email out, but I didn't. And it's just been, well, I'm not going to apologize. It's just been crazy.
Yeah, I understand.
Keep everything running.
Yeah, well, I didn't see this week. I saw the next 2 weeks, so I probably should have emailed that I didn't see it. But also, my father-in-law came into town, so I didn't belligerently just not come to class. I just wanted you to know that.
Well, Lakeisha, I misinformed you because I texted you back. Sent you a text saying it wasn't on the schedule, so that's my fault.
And well, there's enough. I'll take total blame for everything.
No, it's okay.
The buck stops here. Maybe we need people to talk about the buck stops here. Maybe that'd be a good thing. I'll take
all right.
full blame.
Also didn't miss much.
That I didn't see it, and I thought it was maybe I missed it or whatever. But this week was missing. But oh well, it is what it is.
Yeah, don't worry about it. I think I tagged it onto the title of the last one. I said postpone till or something like that, and I should have just changed the date and sent an email, but I just didn't do it. I was trying to figure out what I was going to do last week with just an iPad that wasn't working quite well either. And
earlier than I used to do, so I stopped checking email at 3:45. So I don't really have any questions with our assignment. I think we're doing pretty good for the most.
Yeah, well, I'm available if you need it. If you need if you have questions or you want me to meet with the group if y'all are meeting sometime or whatever, that's fine. I'll be glad to do that. Just let me know.
All right.
All right. All right. Have a good evening.
Lakeisha, I interviewed my first coworker today about our topic, so hopefully I'll have us some data.
Okay, so just type it in the doc and put it in the folder, and so we can look at it on Saturday.
Well, I actually I'm recording them.
Oh.
I'm doing a Zoom and recording it, so.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got 2 more scheduled, so
okay.
I'll have them done by Saturday, so.
Okay then. Thanks, James.
All right, sorry for misinforming you.
That's fine. That's fine.
All right, I'll see you. See you later. Take care.
All right, you too. Dr. Bolt, I'm on my phone, so can you close it for me? I can't